Welcome to a very special episode of Pro Producers, the show where, among many things, we help film and media educators survive the one thing scarier than a freshman trying to mount an ARRI camera on a selfie stick. Today, we're diving into the abyss of introducing new production workflows. Yes, I know. Some of you just broke into cold sweat remembering the last time you tried to introduce new software, right? And your students kind of learned it faster than you could say action. But fear not. We are here to help you. And I'm not alone. Today I'm joined by Chrissy Guest from Ithaca College, and especially in the United States, I think many of you know Chrissy and her restless motivation to enable her students and to prepare them for the future in our beloved media industry. So here's another video for all your hardworking people on set and at film schools and universities. And today's topic is a case study with Ithaca College on teaching film production workflows. All right, welcome, my friends. So let me put this over here. It's getting kind of warm, right? And this also, I think I don't need the cap. And it says one size fits all. Well, I'm not sure if it actually fits this size, but who cares? I'm so glad I have my guests with me. Chrissy Guest, you are TV film producer and professor at Ithaca College. You're the program director for the television, film, and digital media degree at Roy H. Park School of Communications. Welcome, Chrissy.
Thank you so much, Florian. I'm so happy to be here.
Chrissy, we have done like an exciting project together, but basically most of the work was done by you, your students, all your partners, because we just provided some workflow software, right? Tell us more about this exciting project in Fading Light.
Yeah, In Fading Light was a great project for a lot of different reasons. One, the script is great and the cast and the crew, but the crew and the cast have a unique quality, and that is that the majority of them are either faculty, students who had just graduated, like they walked the stage in May, moved their tassel, and then they're on a film set the next month, which was really, really exciting. And then from there, we also had alumni all running our crew from different unions, but working non-union to mentor our alums, our new students. And we also had casts that were alums. So we really worked to kind of create this environment where students, the ones that were still going to be returning in the fall to Ithaca College, and the students who had just recently graduated, and then students who had been out for a while, could all work together on this project. And it was fully funded. The investor fully funded the project, and then we had an incredible writing team. So it was really a great educational opportunity for us to introduce professional workflows to students in a model where they're working with professionals.
This is amazing. I think that's why we said, but also our partners at Final Draft, this is an amazing project, and I think a huge opportunity for the students, but of course also a huge opportunity for us, to be honest, to kind of learn a lot. So maybe before we dive into the workflow itself, tell us a bit about more your initial goals. What was kind of the desired outcome of this project from an educator's perspective?
Yeah, from an educator's perspective, it was really, when we're teaching students in different levels of courses, they're getting little pieces of the puzzle. And a lot of times they're making their own projects, which they have a lot more control. There is collaboration, but not at the professional level, where there are the checks and balances. You have to report to people. You have to keep everything in one concise communication flow. You have to understand what each of the departments, how they're now working together, especially from a production office. That was something that students hadn't experienced before, a full production office. So having this opportunity was really incredible for that, because in classes, again, we're just introducing concepts. Like, we're teaching them how to frame the camera. How does the camera work? And, we're looking at different films, and we're looking at different history of film. We look at different television shows, the same thing, but we're not working at this level where we understand how all the pieces fit together and how important some of those documents are that we need when we're working professionally.
And
So
especially,
yeah.
I mean, we are not talking about like a 3 day shoot for a short here, right? I mean, this is like
Right,
a real
right. This
thing.
was a 20-day plus development. So they interned with us during development. They were there during pre-production, and like many productions, we had a push. So we did have an incident where we had to push. So they learned like, what does push mean? What does that mean for everybody as far as the timeline goes? And how do we implement that, and keep communication and the flow working for everyone that was part of the project?
And I think that's kind of where one ecosystem, kind of one hub comes handy. So if you, I think, of course, you started writing in final draft, right, and having the first versions of the script. Can you like show us what you then did in Yamdu, what the project actually looks like?
Yes, of course. Let me get the project up. Okay. So so this is our dashboard for the project. It originally was titled Fading Twilight. And then from there, you can see, I can go down to the script. So this version of the script, I believe we ended with double cherry is the color that we ended with, because during production, a lot of changes happened. So you can see the script is imported in, and then each of the departments begins to do their breakdowns. So we're able to really get for our AD, and for I was also the UPM, we were able to do our first strip boards and really start to look at the details that need to go into each of the scenes and into our scheduling and our plan for production. But this is where each of the departments, so this is some of the changes that happened, but each department will highlight what they have as far as, either a concern, or they are noting something that needs to be on the call sheet, or like production design is probably the biggest. Art department is one of the biggest departments that I'm looking at. Like, what are they flagging in everything from, set dress to what does locations need to know? What are the props? What are things that are going to cost some
So,
money?
so basically, that means you invited like collaborators, like students and professionals, quite early on to access, for example, the script and the
Yeah.
breakdown sections, right?
Yes. So we can look at, like, if I go to the shooting schedule, you can see that we had several different ones. And the thing that's great about this as an educator is that when you're training ADs and people to schedule things out, they could do tests. So we could look at what they were running back, in May, and then in June, and then in July. We can see all the different drafts, so we can always go back. So we were doing test models where we would run, what if we did it this way? So the playground is where they started to kind of look at different ways that they were going to potentially shoot things out. So Joe, who was our mentoring AD, worked with both Undharma and Henry, our junior ADs, to really see how they could, manipulate the program, and also what are some of the ways that they could do things. So this is one of the manipulated schedules, talking about how they're going to do company
And I
moves.
think it's talking about Joe Burns. I think I mean I think he's a very experienced first and second ID. I think he has been working on
Yeah.
I think JFK, A Beautiful Mind, productions like this. So how tough was it to get a person like him into like a, let's say, student film project?
Oh, I think the wonderful thing, so Joe is retired as an AD, so he was technically our supervising producer, because he was really working with each of the departments to kind of see where he could step in and basically mentor students. So, um, with his expertise in ADing, and second ADing, we obviously leaned on him with the mentorship for Henry and Dharma, and also with what I was doing, just breaking down things. He he took to Yamdu like a fish to water. Like, he just knew, you know, and in fact, he loved the fact it had this much flexibility, and that we could save things because he could have them experiment and he could see what they were doing. And I think that just, that just gives so much flexibility in trying to train people when you can actually see it and they can move things around a lot easier than what we used to do with paper, obviously. But even so, this just seemed to work really well. So there were sections of the actual schedule that both of the junior ADs really fleshed out. And he took from their playground and brought into our master schedule, which was great because it also is very flexible to do that.
That's great. And I think we actually have some footage. So let's see what the students and Joe Burns actually have to say.
I'm Henry Suzuki. I am the second AD for Fading Twilight. And what I love about Yamdu is that it's very intuitive. For me, that I'm a young person, I'm used to like technology. I love the fact that I can use everywhere in any kind of browser, and I can use it on my phone, I can use it on my computer. It's intuitive, everything is easy to find.
Yeah. So when using Yamdu, I really love to use like the search bar here because like let's say I'm looking for a scene with puppy. I would just look up puppy and it just shows up like brings me all the scenes with puppy or the scenes that has a puppy in it, which is pretty useful, I think.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Joe Burns. I'm the first AD. And what I really like about Yamdu is that I can be anywhere on any device, any phone, any computer, and I can work on the strip board or the breakdown pages. And the second ADs that are working over here, they're working on Yamdu right now as I'm working on Yamdu, and they can be in different locations and be working on the same schedule. So it really works out that well in that way. And I might add that I was a beta tester on JFK, the movie JFK. I was the second AD, and I was a beta tester for Movie Magic. This beats Movie Magic.
Okay, wow. That's, I mean, an experienced first AD having an opinion. And I mean, that's great because I think it's not self-evident, Chrissy, right, that professionals jump into a new workflow, right? Usually they want to kind of teach like their existing workflow. So that's, I think, great to see.
Well, what was really great is so when we partnered, Undharma was an intern on the development side, and all of the development interns got to do the Yamdu training. And so through that, students are from the digital world, right? So we basically leaned on, we said, you're going to be responsible for kind of onboarding a lot of the faculty and the students who haven't used this, including some of the departments who haven't used it, just so they can get on board. And that worked out really well because when you give power back to students, hey, you learned this skill. We want you to keep practicing with it because you're going to then explain it to someone. I love to say when you have to explain it, you're going to retain it. And so they were able to, really discipline, practice, and then explain it to the leads in their departments, which gave them such pride, which is what we want as educators, that they were then able to be the supports.
That's great. And learning together, I guess, is always kind of a motivation for the students and everybody else. So how kind of did you structure the team also task-wise in such a larger production, let's say? I think a lot of things needed to be done. Like, did you have people for, I don't know, travel management, for production design,
Yes.
location management? I guess it was quite a large team, right, for such a student film.
By the default of being a film and television educator, you have to learn everything that changes pretty rapidly to then give it to other people to learn. But production design and I were on first. So we were in development and we took on student interns. So we both took the Yamdu training. And then our interns, we hired in the summer production, many of them. So they were already familiar because they had done Yamdu's training directly, how to, implement those tasks, which was really important. And I think that that's no different than having, our TAs or finding a student who is beginning of the lead of each group in a group project, even in lower level classes, to really kind of be the one responsible. Okay, you need to understand how this works. So she took it from production design and taught them how to break down all the props and how everything would have to be listed for her so that she could implement it not only in budget changes, but they could do out their schedule for the day on what they needed for the call sheets and everything that Joe's team would need from her. And the same for me, my production office. The students had all taken like production management, but had never worked in a production office. So the travel function, huge for us. We did that push. Now we've got to rearrange all the travel. And I had a production secretary. They'd never done that role before, but they learned. And this software really did help them because it kind of asked them the question that they may not have thought of, like, do you have these things, listed in the software? It's like, oh, maybe I need these things. I should ask this question. So that was really helpful.
That was amazing because we also have a little snippet. We will see that in a second, I think, because as far as I remember, the travel management part was not even included in the original kind of set of features because we didn't want to overwhelm. But then I think the students discovered this and said, well, there's travel management. Can we try it? And here's a student. Let's take a look what he's saying about the travel management feature.
So I like to use Yamdu for the travel section. Basically, I can go through and it gives me all the actors already, and I can create like travel itineraries for them in the app in Yamdu. Right? Like I can add their hotels and their transportation. I can create vehicles. And it's like just really easy to see it all in one place. It's really nice.
All right, cool. So Tristan obviously discovered, well, travel management can be fun, right? That's interesting to see.
Yeah, and it was something that, what's really interesting is that also in learning all of these different facets of arranging the travel and things for the cast and getting bids for travel, trying to find the right prices, those kinds of things, then scheduling it out, talking to agents, making sure agents get the information, that professionalism level where they're working professionally, they're being trusted with, personnel documentation, and taking that and saying, okay, someone's travel is not something we publicize, which was great because Yamdu, like, you can make the access points certain people and then no one else can see it. So I was able to say, okay, only the 4 production office students can see it, and maybe locations, because locations was also working on helping with the hotels just to make sure that they, had.
And I think especially for locations, at some point, I think the location legend of Cleveland joined the project,
Yes.
right, Robert? So
yes, Robert came in. He did the location scout during pre-production, like during development, because we wanted to see what we could we had access to within our budget. And then he was there during pre-production. But he also, because he was a faculty member, he was able to also mentor students, not only on locations, which we loved Yamdu for, because it gave the director so much assets and ability. And for me to look at and say, that location, while it looks great on the photos look great and everything, there's no place for bathrooms. Like, there's no place to park trucks. Like, that one is not going to work. And the students got to learn that. So they can see all of the assets that we had in locations and really see, what we went with. And then we have that conversation. Why did we choose, when this location looks just as good, why didn't we go with that location? And I can talk to them about, well, there's more than just the thing about it looking good. And like with this production, especially, we needed, access, and we had to keep the cost down. So that was really incredible. The location function.
That's great. And I think we also have a little snippet, Robert Corna, saying something about his work on the project.
As a location manager, I find Yamdu to be incredibly helpful. Especially, I have direct access to the one-line schedule, and I can see what changes are made as they are made. Also, I'm able to create tasks and receive tasks that need to be completed for the day. It also generates a locations day out of days, so we can see when and where we're shooting on each and every day immediately. And finally, it's a great way to share scouting photos because I can upload them to Yamdu and they link up directly with each scene. So we can see all the different choices for locations for each scene, and every single member of the crew can access those photos.
it sounds like the goals have been achieved, but like what are also barriers? What do you think are usually kind of problems that pop up when it comes to introducing new workflows, teaching new workflows? What do you think?
So some of the things, there are old school. There are people that are like paper. So there were tasks where we just had that was just where people were comfortable. We still took the information and put it into the system because we like to keep everything together. But we did have, that kind of that workflow barrier where we're waiting for information. But I think that's one thing. It's just getting people to understand that this is helpful. Like I said, with locations and travel, that just opened up new doors for us. So looking at those things, just getting people to realize that it is an asset, and it won't take them a lot of time once they get used to the workflow. The other things we had, challenge wise, were just the simple things of not knowing what you don't know, not knowing and then not knowing how to fix it. But the great thing is there were times where I would do an import and I'd have a problem, but the Yamdu help was always there, and like we would work through it, and then we would talk about it in the room the next day and say, okay, this is what we have to look out for next time. Like, by the way, when you import, like make sure you're checking this, because that will, that's part of the learning curve. It's like, oh,
And that was also, by the way, for us, a big learning curve and very helpful, because I think the great thing with such a project is you get like immediate feedback. Nobody's kind of shy of giving very frank feedback. And that I think that particular moment you're talking about with the script importer also helped us to actually improve the feature, making the steps more clear. But I think I remember that very moment where kind of the scene numbering got a bit chaotic for.
Yeah, there's different things, right? And you don't know what's going on until it happens, and you're like, how is this happening? But then we fixed it pretty like really quickly, and then we were able to move on.
Well, this is so great, Chrissy, and thank you again for sharing those insights. So, what would be a kind of final recommendations for other educators how to get started?
Absolutely. So I talked a little bit about the 300 level, but we introduce Yamdu at our 200 level. So our sophomores, we start them in TV series production. We start with Yamdu, and the first thing we do is when we do a character development, but then we do script breakdowns. So the first thing we do as a group together is do a script breakdown. So the whole class it logs on, and they're given a scene out of the same script, and they do the breakdown, and then we look at it the next week and say, okay, did everyone break down the script correctly? And then we look at how that leads to scheduling for ADing. So we're able to kind of work through some of these things because I use Yamdu as a lab. And so we are able to do that. We really get to see them starting to think about how this is supporting them, how much faster they are. Their communication lines aren't everywhere. And it also helps with privacy because, students oftentimes have to say, I want to share, we'll just be in a text chain or whatever. That can get very tricky privacy wise for faculty we can't monitor that text. We're not usually in those text groups. There could be violations of using someone's information incorrectly. So Yamdu allows us to say, no, you're going to communicate through Yamdu. If you have a task, you put it in the taskbar, and then they can see it and they can implement it. And we can look at Yamdu and see where you interfaced. You can send out an announcement. You can send out a call sheet with distribution. So there's no reason for you to have to be on a text chain or have personal information from your group if you don't choose to.
Thank you, Chrissy, so much for sharing those insights. And I think we're after this project, we're all ready kind of to graduate, right? So I think what's the tradition? I think I have to move this from one side to the other, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. So, Chrissy, and we will always support you, your projects, and course, I hope we will support many other projects of many schools and universities out there, Yamdu, but also in the bundle with Final Draft. So I think this project is amazing. Thank you for your work. What you do is amazing. And thanks for preparing students for the future of film production.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Florian. It was an honor to be here.
So there you have it. I hope it encourages you to tackle the impossible and introduce new production workflows to your classes. And hey, if the software, is working smoothly, maybe you got more time to teach how safely to use hardware, right? All right. Thank you very much. See you next time. If you think this video is useful, please click like and subscribe. And always remember, she works hard for the money.